Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this new session of the Cosmetic Packaging Masterclasses under the framework of the EPIC project. My name is Susana Ranz, Executive Director of Estampa, the Spanish Cosmetic, Toilet and Perfumery Association, and Innovation Director at Feeling Innovation, the Spanish cluster promoted by Estampa for cosmetic innovation and the partner of the cosmetic sector in EPIC project. Thank you all for joining us today. It's a pleasure to connect with so many of you across Europe, not only Spain. And we have already over 100 registered participants. So we are going to wait just 2 more minutes, okay, before starting. And then I will present to our speaker from Cosmetics Europe and the session and some brief instructions, okay? As you can see, this session will be recorded and the recording and presentation will be shared with you afterwards. And at the end of the session, we'll open the floor for a question and answer session. So please feel free to add your questions in the Zoom chat during the presentation. So just start, if it's okay for you, let me briefly introduce the EPIC project. This project is funded by the European Union under the Interregional Innovation Investment Instrument. And EPIC aims to accelerate innovation in sustainable packaging and supports its adoption in key sectors like cosmetic, food, and pharma sectors. The project brings together 10 partners from 8 countries, as you can see, including clusters, technology centers, packaging material and machinery suppliers, and user industries. And the idea is to strengthen the regional innovation ecosystem and respond to regulatory and sustainability challenges. A key ambition of EPIC is to understand the real innovation needs of client sectors as today's cosmetics, so that their packaging suppliers can design and develop solutions that are aligned with current and future regulations, preserve product safety, reduce environmental impact, reflect brand identity, and respond to consumer demands. Feeling Innovation is the representative of the perfumery, cosmetic, and personal care sector, and we provide this perspective along the packaging value chain. And the project will run until the end of 2026, and we look forward to engaging with many of you throughout its journey. Okay. So apart from this masterclass, we also invite you to join the next EPIC masterclasses focused on sustainable cosmetic packaging. As you can see, on November 14, we talk about recyclability challenges and material innovation, featuring insights from KPMG and the Technological Center INEA. And on November 28, we'll explore sustainability from the perspective of packaging machinery with a speaker from the cosmetic brand Bavaria from Spain, Polytech Cantorum Technology Park from Poland. You can follow all updates on the EPIC LinkedIn, as Agnieszka mentioned just a few minutes ago. So we are very pleased to welcome Enrico Iacovicci. Enrico is the Public Affairs Manager at Cosmetics Europe, the European Personal Care Association. He is specialized in sustainability and the single market and brings over 10 years of experience in EU policies and sustainable production and consumption. Throughout his career, he has worked across different industries associations in the fashion and pharma sector, as well as in the European Parliament, combining technical expertise with a deep understanding of the European regulatory landscape. In this session, Enrico will guide us through the main priorities and ongoing debates shaping the future of cosmetic packaging in Europe, from the packaging and packaging waste regulation, including key aspects such as minimization, recycled plastic content, labeling, and design for recycling, to the last discussion on PFAS and substances of concern. He will also share insights of the eco-design for sustainable product regulations and the upcoming digital product passport, as well as a brief update on the Green Claims Initiative. And finally, we will help us understand the overall landscape of threats and opportunities for sustainable and innovative cosmetic packaging in Europe. So thank you very much, Enrico. Welcome to this masterclass. The floor is yours. When you're ready, you can share your presentation. I will just stop sharing mine.
Yeah, thank you, Susanna, and thank you, everyone. I will just share my slides. Uh, mm, mm, just a second. And I think you see it full screen now, correct?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. So again, good morning, everyone, and thanks for the invitation to speak about cosmetics packaging and regulatory developments and innovation today. Um, it's a topic I've been dealing with since my first day at Cosmetics Europe more than 2 years ago. And I have to say, it never gets boring because it's still something in the making. The implementation is at the very beginning of all the new legislation concerning cosmetics packaging. So it's really interesting to see it as it evolves day by day almost. Um, to begin with, I wanted to explain why did I choose to refer to the Green Deal in the title of my presentation, because it may sound a bit old-fashioned under this new commission more than 1 year after the elections. We know the European elections. We know that the keywords of the European Commission have changed a lot compared to 2019 when the Green Deal came out. Now we're talking a lot about simplification and competitiveness, and we have initiatives like the Environmental Omnibus, the Circular Economy Act, that are trying to streamline and simplify and optimize legislation to make it more workable and easier to implement and less burdensome for companies. That being said, the Green Deal was a major set of pieces of legislation that was unrolled over the last 5 years. And it brought about major changes that are there to stay. We know that especially the cosmetics industry in the past was focusing a lot on very few key pieces of legislation concerning cosmetics specifically, like the cosmetics product regulation, of course, or the CLP REACH regulation. But the Green Deal really brought about a big change with a new set of horizontal legislative frameworks that had an impact across different sectors, including cosmetics, adding on top of what vertical sectoral legislation already required until 2019. And we can see that when it comes to cosmetics packaging, first and foremost, we have to mention the packaging and packaging waste regulation, of course, which introduced a number of disruptors, if we want, in cosmetics packaging that we will look at in a few moments. But and I can just mention a few, like packaging minimization or design for recycling criteria, waste sorting instructions. But the PPWR, of course, is not the only piece of the Green Deal puzzle that affected cosmetics packaging, because we have the Eco Design for Sustainable Products regulation, the so-called ESPR, which also will introduce in the future, very likely, will have an impact on cosmetics packaging, but also other pieces of legislation like the Empowering Consumers for the Green Transition Directive. These are all pieces of legislation that horizontally set a framework that, through then the development of implementing execution act, will have an impact on cosmetics packaging. Moving to the next slide after this brief introduction, I want to start diving directly into the topic of cosmetics packaging, starting with the PPWR, to give you an update on the main legislative developments, regulatory developments of the last months since the adoption of the PPWR. As Cosmetics Europe, we are focusing on a number of key priorities. The PPWR is a very broad piece of legislation, and we had to prioritize what we wanted to invest our energy in, and certainly packaging minimization is a key element. And under these work stream, there are two main strands that we're following. As you may know, as you may remember, minimization requirement of the PPWR brings about many novelties compared to the packaging waste directive that it replaced. It introduces a number of minimization performance criteria, which will be then translated into reality by updating a SEN standard on packaging minimization and prevention. As a first step, as Cosmetics Europe, we became a liaison member of SEN to be able to actively participate in the revision of this standard and bring forward the perspective of the cosmetics industry, because of course cosmetics have very specific features when it comes to packaging, from the size to the type of materials that are used, and the health and safety requirements that we have to abide by, and that can pose some constraints for the proper application of certain minimization requirements. One important aspect of packaging minimization that we are trying to make sense of, in particular, is also functionality. Functionality is recognized as a performance criteria that must be taken into consideration when designing and minimized cosmetic packaging. But functionality for cosmetics is very important, as you know, as you can easily think of many cosmetics packaging that are not only a container, but they have an active function in terms of dispensing the product, dosing the product, or even applying directly on the body, if we think of a mascara or makeup shells, for instance. This is a big change compared to the original Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, because functionality doesn't have a prominent role as it used to have in the directive under the umbrella of consumer acceptance. So we have to understand now how functionality can be understood under the new regulation. The annex of the regulation makes some references to the particularities giving rise to the sale of the product. For instance, in the case of seasonal gifts, seasonal packages, which are very common in the cosmetics industry, and which by design are very difficult to minimize, because perhaps they contain 3, 4, 5 different products in a grouped packaging. And so it will be this will be one of the main challenges when it comes to minimization, how we can meet a minimization requirement while preserving the appearance, the aesthetic, and the functionality of different cosmetic packaging types. Another aspect that we're looking at under packaging minimization is the application, the introduction of maximum weight and volume limits for most common packaging types and formats. The regulation says that the Commission will have to develop a list of most common packaging for which these maximum limits will have to be defined. Of course, this has a clear impact because it may limit, it may lead, let's say, to standardization or anonymization of packaging, because the moment you set some limits, you reduce also the ability of a company to develop more creative designs. And this is a fundamental aspect for cosmetics, where we know the packaging is also has also a presentation functionality, which is also recognized, by the way, in the definition of packaging in the regulation. This is a work that is ongoing right now. We don't have a lot of news from the Commission. We know that they are working with a consultant, an external consultant, to develop this list of most common packaging types. What we know is that the approach they are taking is most likely based on the market volume. The most common packaging will mean the packaging which is mostly diffuse in the European market. Especially if this is calculated in terms of weight, we can expect that cosmetics will not be included in this list. And this is also an indication that we informally got from the European Commission. But of course, we are still monitoring the situation because of the challenges that this may pose should cosmetics be eventually included in this list of most common packaging types and formats. With regard to the standard, as I said, Cosmetics Europe joined the CEN, the European standardization body, to develop the standard, but the actual work has not started formally yet because we are waiting for the European Commission to draft a mandate for CEN to update this standard. That being said, nothing hinders CEN to already start informally discussing about the update of the standard, and we expect these informal talks to start relatively soon. This is a little bit an overview of the first priority I wanted to highlight concerning packaging, the PPWR and packaging minimization. But of course, as I said, there are other aspects that are relevant for Cosmetics Europe under the PPWR. And one of them is also waste sorting, which I briefly mentioned earlier in my presentation. The PPWR introduces a harmonized waste sorting labeling system, which is supposed to become a uniform EU-wide system to label material composition of packaging so that consumers can more easily separate and sort packaging when they dispose of it. As you can see in this slide, there is a draft prototype of this harmonized system. This is not final. We are expecting the JRC, the Joint Research Center, which is the scientific arm of the European Commission, to finalize a report in these days, actually, and send it to the European Commission, to DG Environment. And based on this prototype, then DG Environment will develop an implementing act, so a piece of legislation which will define the final harmonized system, which should be adopted by the European Commission, if I remember correctly, by August next year. So we are not talking of a long period of time, actually. But this work has been ongoing for 1.5 years already. This is a very welcome news, I have to say, from the cosmetics industry, because having a harmonized single system in Europe will really help in consolidating packaging information on pack, which is quite a challenge for cosmetics, especially those with a small size, which do not have a lot of printable surface on the packaging to display information. And we know that there is a regulatory pressure at European level and also national level, actually, to include more and more consumer information on the packaging. So when this system will be able to replace all the different national labeling system, it will really help small packaging in displaying the information in the correct and visible and legible way. Of course, there are some caveats that we raised with the Commission, because if the purpose of labeling is harmonization, it's very important to avoid the use of text on next to the different icons that you see, because the use of text means translating the text in different languages of the different member states of the EU. And that means, of course, that for every country, for every different language, you will have a different packaging execution. So you won't say really, you won't really rationalize packaging production if you have to have 23 different languages or 23 different type of packaging with 23 different languages printed on them. So we advise the Commission to avoid the use of text, and the signals so far were encouraging, but of course, we have to wait for the final decision of the Commission, and in the meantime, we will keep talking to them about this issue. And other aspects we are stressing with the Commission again is to avoid the mandatory use of colors, so that the pictogram can fit better in the overall display of the packaging, and also to avoid technical issues with printing, linked to the number of colors and cylinders that can be used when printing packaging. And two more issues we raised are the possibility for companies to decide where to place the pictogram on the packaging, and the size of the packaging. The size of the pictogram of the packaging, again, for reason of display and available printable surface on the cosmetics packaging. Let's say that the guiding principles in this case should be the visibility and legibility of the pictogram. So we always want to have visibility and legibility for consumers as the key point, but keeping all these elements that I just described in mind when developing this harmonized system. A few critical aspects remain, of course. This is not perfect yet. For instance, the introduction of the hazardous pictogram, the red one on the very right of the picture, which we believe can be very confusing for consumers if not properly explained, and also because it doesn't really refer to a material type, but rather to a material characteristic. So we suggested the Commission to drop it out of the system, as well as the clarity of certain pictograms, which we believe can be improved. For instance, under the orange pictograms on fiber-based composite packaging, the third one, other composite, is too vague. It could be potentially applied to a very broad set of packaging. It doesn't really give sufficient information to consumers to sort the packaging properly. So this is a system which is being developed. It's not perfect. It's still in the making. And as Cosmetics Europe, as cosmetics industry, we are trying to give our perspective to the Commission to make it as workable as possible, as workable as possible for companies, as understandable as possible for consumers, of course. But I want to come back on a last point about harmonized waste that I mentioned in the beginning of this slide, which is the impact vis-a-vis national labeling rules. Trying to go to the next slide. Yeah, there it is. Because as you know, as many companies are aware of, there is a set of national rules concerning packaging and material composition, which diverge from country to country. And I mentioned a few examples in this slide from Spain and from France. So what does the PPWR wants to do? PPWR says that member states can maintain or introduce these kind of requirements as long as they are not in conflict with the PPWR. But at the same time, member states cannot prohibit the placing on their national market of packaging that is compliant with the PPWR, even if it is not compliant with the national waste sorting labeling rules. It sounds a bit of a like of a contradiction, and we are asking the Commission really to clarify how this will be implemented in practice, because of course we don't want a parallel system with European rules and national rules be applied at the same time, because that won't bring any simplification, any help to companies, neither to consumers, because you would have, first of all, twice as much labeling on the packaging, and consumers will have to face different pictograms telling them the same information, which of course can be very confusing. So we would really like this harmonized system to overrun any national rule from the moment of its implementation in 2028. I brought some example here from Spain and from France. You may be aware of them already because some of them are not so new anymore, like the three-man logo from France, which is a long-standing issue for many companies. And actually, the European Commission started an infringement procedure earlier this year asking France to withdraw the logo because it is against the Article 34 and 36 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, so on the free movement of goods across the single market. And something similar happened for the Royal Decree on Packaging and Packaging Waste of Spain, where the Commission started an infringement procedure, and at the same time, the Spanish government is now looking into ways to address the issue by revising or replacing this decree, which entered into force on 1st of January of this year. And the third example is, again, from Spain, which is very recent, is this new draft decree on accessible labeling, which aims at introducing tools to facilitate the understanding of labeling for people with disabilities, in particular visual impairments, and in particular, for instance, the use of the Braille language, which has many complications in terms of practical feasibility, practical manufacturing of the packaging, but also in terms of, for instance, size of the packaging, because Braille language will require a much bigger surface on the packaging to be engraved. And luckily, the Commission in October, on the 3rd of October, if I remember correctly, this year, issued a detailed opinion telling the Spanish government that this decree indeed, again, infringes the free movement of goods in the single market, and it doesn't provide sufficient justification for its proportionality. And now, and so it asked for the suspension of this procedure on the adoption of this decree until the 23rd of December of this year, so that Spain can provide additional details, additional justification about this draft decree, or make some adaptation to bring it back in line with the EU rules. We can see basically that there is a growing interest from the European Commission to make the single market work. This kind of procedures usually take a long time to happen, but it's very promising and encouraging to see that with the new commission that started working in July last year, there is a more consolidated effort, especially by Commissioner Séjourné, the Commissioner for Industry, to address these national rules that may fragment the internal market when it comes to labeling of packaging and waste sorting information. Another topic which we are working on under the umbrella of the PPWR is the minimum PCR, minimum post-consumer recycled plastic content, which you can see the mandatory targets that are introduced by the PPWR related to cosmetics packaging. And you can see that these percentages, these mandatory targets that must be met by the industry should be calculated in a very complex way, so to speak, because the PPWR says that those 3% has to be calculated for any plastic part of packaging per packaging type and format, calculated as an average per manufacturing plant per year. So it basically means that every plastic part that is produced in a manufacturing plant every year has to meet one of those 3% depending on the plastic type. That is quite a challenging issue for cosmetics. There are many implementation challenges. First of all, because, as I mentioned already, cosmetics packaging has to meet very high health and safety standard from the cosmetics product regulation requirements. And the quality of recycled plastic vis-a-vis virgin materials is not always sufficient to meet those health and safety standards. And the same goes for the appearance, the aesthetic of cosmetics packaging, because we know that some materials like, I don't know, PP or PE, for instance, that are mechanically recycled contain a lot of impurities that hinder their use in contact-sensitive packaging, which is, of course, cosmetics packaging is contact-sensitive packaging. But you also have recycled PET, recycled HDPE, for instance, that are not of sufficient quality, and they retain certain odors, or they are not able to reach the right colors that are required by the cosmetics companies, and so cannot really be used as efficiently as virgin materials. There is, besides these technical and quality issues, also a problem with the scarcity. It's a broader issue of scarcity of raw materials, secondary plastics in the European market, because simply the recyclability at scale is not there yet. There is not sufficient recycling volumes. Meaning also that the prices of secondary raw materials are not very competitive compared to virgin materials, which makes it more difficult and economically unviable for companies to switch to the use of secondary raw materials. Therefore, we really hope the Commission, especially with the upcoming Circular Economy Act, will set in place some measures to develop this European market for secondary raw materials, because a mandatory target per se is not sufficient if the market conditions are not there to meet the target. Another issue with scarcity is also that we can expect a lot of competition among companies, among sectors, with larger sectors that will be able to collect most of the secondary plastic available, while cosmetics packaging, which is relatively smaller compared to other sectors, might struggle a bit more. And in particular, smaller companies might not have the financial capacity to make larger purchases to lower the price of the secondary raw materials compared to larger companies that will have, of course, the upper hand in this situation. So the situation is a bit dire here, and we hope the Commission will come up with good solutions. What is the possible solution that we are suggesting? First of all, to have a simpler calculation rule compared to the one in italic up in the slide. So, for instance, a company could calculate the amount of recycled plastic used as an average of the overall plastic that they use in all the packaging they place on the market during one financial year. This will help companies in introducing more recycled content where it's more feasible. And so to balance out those more technical and specialized packaging where, for health reasons or safety reasons, it's more difficult to introduce recycled plastics. This calculation rule would also be aligned with the Single-Use Plastic Directive, which already has a similar system to what we are proposing here. And a second aspect is the scope that I already mentioned. So calculating all the packaging across placed on the EU market, so not a calculation on individual manufacturing plants, because specialized manufacturing plants will struggle in meeting these targets as they are now. And most importantly, we also need the Commission to acknowledge and support advanced recycled technologies from chemical recycling and other types that will help really boost the market for secondary raw materials in Europe and the amount of secondary raw materials necessary to meet the targets of the PPWR. Another point on the PPWR is the design for recycling criteria that will be introduced over the next months and years by the European Commission. The PPWR says that as of 2030, packaging can be placed on the market only if it is recyclable. And to be recyclable, it will have to meet certain design for recycling criteria, through which it can be graded through different grades, A, B, or C. And only packaging that is graded A, B, or C will be deemed sufficiently recyclable to be placed on the market. And as of the end of 2037, only packaging with grade A and B will be allowed to be placed on the market. So it will become more restrictive over time. These design for recycling criteria are still in the making. Again, the European standardization body SEN has a central role in developing these standards, and the one for plastics are basically ready. They are awaiting final validation by SEN before they are given to the Commission, so the Commission can translate them into legislation. And how they work very quickly, there are several parameters to evaluate the recyclability of packaging, and I mentioned them here in the slide. You have the use of additives and labels and sleeves, the presence of closures or small components, the use of adhesives, of colors and dyes, the material composition, the use of coatings, inks and prints, and the presence of product residues in the packaging, or the ease of dismantling of the different components. As you can see from this list of parameters, design for recycling criteria can be very disruptive for cosmetics because almost any of these parameters present challenges for cosmetics packaging. If we take, for instance, adhesives, the use of adhesives, sometimes it's fundamental in cosmetics, especially for those that there needs to be used in the bathroom, like a shower gel or a shampoo, that are subject to high humidity, high heat, high temperatures. And so they need adhesives that are good enough to keep the label attached to the packaging during the whole use phase of the cosmetic product. And this is something fundamental because the CPR requires that consumers have and maintain access to those product information that are affixed on the packaging of the cosmetic product. So the use of adhesives, sometimes it's really fundamental. And the same goes for material composition, for instance, where sometimes the use of different materials in the same cosmetics packaging is necessary because each material performs a different function. And I can think of flexible packaging made of several layers of plastics like PE and aluminium and other materials, each one with a different function, which could be the avoidance of leakage, the preventing the formation of moisture in the packaging, and so the wasting of the product. Therefore, moving to a monomaterial packaging, which would be the ideal scenario under the design for recycling criteria, is really difficult in certain circumstances, and see how these issues can be addressed through new solutions. In fact, the design for recycling criteria are disruptive also from the innovation point of view, because it will really require companies and manufacturers of packagings to think about alternative solutions. And I know some national associations are already working on some guidelines or some research. But of course, it will also be up to individual companies to develop innovative solutions. What is key here is the time, because there is not a lot of time before these design for recycling criteria come into force. But innovation requires investments, it requires time, of course. So we are trying to explain to the Commission the specific challenges of cosmetics to see how they can be addressed in practice to avoid that certain packaging will not be able to be placed on the market anymore once the criteria enter into force. Interestingly, the last point on this is the packaging size is not mentioned as a parameter, but for cosmetics, again, it's very important. Many cosmetics packaging are of small size, as I said several times already, and that creates an issue when it comes to the sorting of waste, because small packaging sometimes is not detected or can fall off the conveyors in recycling plants, so they simply drop out of the sorting process and are not recycled. And we know that there are some projects across Europe to try and address this issue. For instance, in Spain, with the IESA Circular Beauty, there is a project to try and collect this small cosmetics packaging to see how it can be properly then directed into the recycling streams. There are a few other work streams on PPWR, but I will be very quick on it because I'm running out of time and there are still a few slides. I just wanted to say that the Commission is going to issue a guidance notice and an FAQ document soon, we hope. They've been working on it for a few months now, and we hope that these two documents will help us in understanding certain aspects of the PPWR that are not clear yet. For instance, the implementation of the minimum recycled content requirements. And the Commission at the same time is working also on PFAS, which PPWR restricts in food packaging. So this doesn't really address cosmetics, but we know that many cosmetic companies use food grade packaging, and so they were also worried whether this would indirectly apply to them, but legally that is not the case. The Commission is also going to publish soon a draft act to exempt certain transport packaging from the 100% reusability requirement, especially pallet wraps and straps will be exempted from these requirement of reusability. And the Commission is also working on the register of producers to develop a common format for the registration and reporting on this register, which is basically the register where producers that are part of an EPR scheme will have to report data about their EPR, their participation in the EPR systems. Last but not least, or actually very important, the Commission has, ECHA, the European Chemical Agency, started working on substances of concern, in particular on collecting a list of substances of concerns that are used in packaging, any sort of packaging, not only cosmetics. And based on this list, the Commission will then make a report on substances of concerns in packaging by the end of next year, presenting also potential restrictions on the use of these substances in packaging. And these restrictions can be either based on human health, and that will go through the usual REACH restriction procedure, or on the negative impact that a substance can have on the circularity of packaging materials, their reuse and recyclability. In that case, the design for recycling criteria will be updated under the PPWR to reflect these potential new restrictions that will come out at the end of next year. The European Chemical Agency started a consultation which closed last week, and we participated, sharing a few key messages, again, on the insufficient market for secondary raw materials in Europe and the competition for high quality materials that will come out of this underdeveloped market. But we also stress the importance of ensuring regulatory consistency between PPWR and REACH to avoid conflicting restrictions or conflicting overlapping provisions coming out of the PPWR and REACH restrictions. And finally, we also stress the need to respect existing safety safeguards under the cosmetics product regulation, where under the CPR there are already strong safeguards on the presence and migration of substances from the packaging to the product. So we insisted on the fact that new restrictions shouldn't go beyond the safeguards that are already developed or will be developed under the CPR. Again, to avoid mismatches and conflicting requirements under different pieces of legislation. With this, I close on the PPWR, and just a quick word on the ESPR, which is the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. It was adopted last year, and when it comes to packaging and cosmetics packaging, it introduces two key impacting elements, which are the eco-design requirements and the digital product passport. The eco-design requirements are, you see the definition here in this slide. This is a copy-paste from the text of the regulation. Basically are requirement that aims at making a product more sustainable throughout its life cycle. And the digital product passport is exactly what you read. It's a passport with different type of information on the sustainability, but not only the sustainability of the product, and of course it is in a digital format. Talking of the eco-design requirements, there are two types: the sustainability performance requirements, which really will define certain requirements or limits that must be met by a product throughout its entire life cycle, from raw material extraction to production, use, and post-consumer recycling and disposal. And it can address any product part. In the case of cosmetics, also the packaging. And we have seen the JRC in 2024 published a study where they developed some examples of eco-design requirements for a different type of product groups, including cosmetics. And when it came to cosmetics, a lot of these requirements were about packaging, in fact, somehow overlapping with the PPWR, if you want, or going beyond the PPWR, requiring, for instance, a maximum product packaging ratio to reduce the empty space in the packaging, and so the overall material use. And again, the maximum weight and volume of the product and the packaging, which I already described as a requirement under the PPWR. And also, you see another couple examples here in the slide, but I will go forward in the interest of time. Other requirements, eco-design requirements are under the ESPR are information requirements, which basically tell what information should be displayed about the products, and who it should be addressed to, who can access it, whether it's information from a producer for a retailer, or it's an information for consumers, or an information for waste operators, for instance, on the presence of certain substances, and also how the information has to be displayed. For instance, if the information must be displayed on pack, or it can be dematerialized, so digitalized through the digital product passport. So far, there is no action on these on cosmetics, but we expect that already in 2028 the Commission might decide to do something about cosmetics, develop some requirements for cosmetics. We are not sure about it yet, but it's a possibility we are taking into consideration, and of course we have a dialogue with the Commission to understand better what is going to happen in the next years. Second point on the ESPR is the DPP. Again, very quickly, we expect it to be introduced via two streams of legislation, as I said already, through the ESPR, but also through the CPR. This is the information the hint we got from the European Commission. It is not confirmed yet, but it could be that in a future revision of the CPR, the DPP will be introduced, as it already happened with other sectors like the toy regulation, for instance. That being said, we see the DPP as a very positive development, because the digitalization of information can have several benefits in terms of removing certain information from the packaging to make it more visible and easy to print and to produce. But of course, we want some information to remain on the packaging. For instance, information on the safe use of the cosmetics. Digital information can also be managed and updated more easily, can be easily accessed by consumers anywhere in the EU market. It entails less use of resources, and overall, it can benefit the overall look and production of the packaging. So we are looking at possible implementation of the DPP in cosmetics in the future. But of course, we have to wait for the Commission to give us signals of whether this is going to happen sooner or later. Just to conclude on the empowering consumers and the green claims directives, these two twin directives, let's say, have clear objectives of preventing greenwashing and provide consumers with trustworthy information on the sustainability of the products they purchase. And especially the Empowering Consumers Directive might have an indirect impact on packaging because the packaging might be redesigned to accommodate more detailed information on the environmental claims that are made about any given cosmetic product. So it means, again, new information, indirect information requirements to be placed on pack. So this can also have an impact. The Empowering Consumer Directive was adopted. The Green Claims Directive is somewhere in the Council of the EU, but there is no clear future. The Commission has even suggested to withdraw it, but we are waiting for clear signals on whether it will be eventually adopted or just withdrawn. So last slide. What I wanted to say and to conclude with this quick update on regulatory developments concerning packaging, cosmetics packaging, is that there was certainly a transition, a shift from the Green Deal to the simplification agenda. But the way we want to look at it is more not from Green Deal to simplification, but from Green Deal to optimization of the legislation to make it more fit for purpose, more workable, and more effective. We don't want simply to deregulate. We want the Green Deal objective to be met properly without impacting the competitiveness of EU cosmetics companies, of course. The Green Deal set, let's say, ambitious sustainability goals with 360-degree goals with a clear impact on cosmetics packaging. And this shift from the Green Deal to the new Commission agenda can be a driver for simplification, for optimization, but also a driver for innovation in cosmetics packaging, because companies will have to adapt to the rules coming from the Green Deal. But the new simplification agenda can really help in creating the right regulatory condition for this innovation to take place in a competitive manner, let's say. So we really look forward to the Commission to remove all the legal uncertainty around the PPWR, the ESPR, so that companies will be really able to dedicate the right resources to innovation and make packaging fit for the future and fit for the environment. And I stop here. I'm a bit over time, so thanks a lot again. And if there is any question, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Enrico. Very clarifying and complete presentation. I think everything was very clear, and our companies are very updated through our sustainability area about these updates in the sustainability and packaging regulations. In any case, there are a few questions in the chat, but before that, just I would like to share with attendees one more thing. In the next phase of the EPIC project, we'll start working on business cases for innovative projects. That means that cosmetic companies member of Stampa and Feeling Innovation will receive in the next days a questionnaire in order to raise packaging challenges for cosmetics. So in this way, the packaging value chain can work together to solve them, okay? So just for you to know. And then just about the questions. Marta Wright from Rofersam just say, then the waste sorting information will be mandatory in the labeling?
Yes, the idea is that that picture that I showed in its final version will become mandatory for companies, hopefully replacing all the existing national rules. But yes, it will be mandatory.
Thank you. Another question, from what date will the new packaging requirements be effective?
It depends on the packaging requirement. Each one has a different implementation date, but let's say that the earliest will become implementable in 2028. If I remember, I can then double check if you want. If I remember correctly, the minimization criteria will, the minimization will start in 2030. The design for recycling criteria in 2028, and the waste sorting labeling system as well in 2028. I'm not sure about the minimum recycled content. I think it's 2028 again, but could be 2030. I'm not sure.
No worries. Any questions from Spanish companies can be, reached to Lucia Jimenez from our sustainability area, and she will answer it as soon as possible. There is no more question in the chat. I don't know if any of the attendees want to raise the hand or open the camera and participate in the final question and answer session. If not, we will thank you, all of you, and of course to Enrico. Any question? No? So yes, perfect time, 11 o'clock. Thank you very much, all of you, and thank you, Enrico, for your participation. See the attendees in the next masterclass. Just remember that you have to register in advance, and we will send the Zoom link a few days before the masterclass. Thank you, Enrico, once again, and thank you to all the organizers of the masterclass and teams from the EPIC partners. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you for the invitation.
Have a nice day.